Welcome to the Corpse Club, the official podcast of dailydead.com. I am one of your co-hosts, Derek Anderson, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by one of my fellow co-hosts, Bryan Christopher. Thank you for joining me today, Bryan. It's nice to be reunited after our recent Hellraiser episode.
Reunited, and it feels so good, but we're get a little late getting started. I was here on time. What were you doing that you were a few minutes late? I'm sure it was very important.
Yeah, I would like to say I was like cranking out some last minute Daily Dead posts or doing research on our episode. But dear listeners, I was doing none other than watching the QVC channel and realizing that I had an episode to record. So in a way, Bryan, you prevented me from buying some $70 fruitcake for the holidays and got me out of that situation and into the podcasting chair.
It just absolutely tickles me that you're like, sorry, I got so caught up in QVC. I lost track of the time.
I mean, that, we don't just watch horror movies around here. We got to get some palate cleansers once in a while.
We have other interests. We're human beings, people. Like, we're not just horror movie analyst machines. Like, we like to do other things. Some of us like to go on hikes. Some of us get into like board games. And then some of us like to watch QVC for hours on end.
Yes, just staring intently at the screen with somehow a landline phone in my hand, just watching in the glow of the television, just waiting for that right color of the crock pot where I can finally pull the trigger.
When they get to that right moment where it's just like, you've only got 3 minutes. We've taken 90% off, buy it now. Otherwise you're never going to. And meanwhile, they have like 3 million of these things in their warehouse. Like, they're never going to get rid of them.
Yes, it's all a strategy, as I've found out. It's like finding out that something you thought was real is just a tragic lie. And, but that's it's one of those things, QVC, it kind of is fitting in a weird way for this episode because another Halloween has come and gone. We're all in recovery mode after what has to be one of the busiest Octobers that we've ever seen in the horror genre, at least in recent memory. And we're all understandably like a little hungover with our love of horror. Yeah. And so I feel like when you're hungover, maybe you do watch QVC and you make some impulse purchases that you may or may not regret later.
and I will say, if any of our diehard horror fans are listening and being like, I can't believe you're going on another tangent that has nothing to do with horror, I'll bring it back to horror. We were talking before the episode, Derek, and one of the very first interviews that I ever did with somebody for Daily Dead was with Lar Park Lincoln. Tina from Friday the 13th 7 and New Blood. We were talking a little bit, just doing some small talk, let her know I was from Pennsylvania. And she said, I spent a lot of time in Chester County, Pennsylvania, because that's where the QVC headquarters is. And there was a period of time where I hosted some of their programming. So there's a connection, people. We're bringing it back. It's at the very least horror adjacent.
And it would especially be amazing if, like, at some point in her QVC career, like Adrienne King came on to sell Crystal Lake wine that she has, and worlds would have collided in the Friday the 13th multiverse. It would have been, I just like to imagine that stuff like that just randomly happened.
Yeah, the QVC headquarters would have like imploded in on itself.
And, this has been kind of an annual tradition doing the Halloween hangover. And so, maybe we're hungover metaphorically, maybe literally, but it's funny. This is, I think, our 4th annual Halloween hangover, which is especially funny because I think we've been doing this podcast for 5 years. So maybe one year we were all just too hungover to do an episode.
Well, I mean, it's just you and me this year. So I think everybody else is still passed out in the van.
Which is we'll definitely find out how everyone's Halloween went at some point down the line. We'll have plenty of time coming up here in the weeks to come. But I'm so glad that we have you on because you weren't able to join us for our Halloween Ends episode that Scott and Tamika and I did recently. And I know you actually got a chance to see Halloween Ends, and you have a lot of thoughts about the movie that I think I'm excited to hear about.
Yeah, that is actually how I spent my Halloween. The last thing I did the evening of Halloween was to watch Halloween Ends. So I thought it was a fitting way to end Halloween.
Hmm.
I did not like this movie.
So you
And
would have been going against the overall current, overall
yeah,
flow of our episode, because we
yeah,
were all more or less were, I guess, relatively positive about it to some
yeah,
extent.
I would have been the curmudgeon of the group. I, I will say I did not like loathe this movie the way I did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which if anyone wants to see me bummed out or hear me bummed out for like an hour and a half straight, go back and listen to that episode from earlier this year. I was not happy. um, like
No,
I
you
think
were
I
not.
legitimately got depressed talking about that movie. Like
Yeah,
I wasn't angry, I was just sad. Um
you weren't mad. You were just disappointed.
yes, exactly. And that's so much worse. So with Halloween Ends, it's more of a I've never really had like I've always enjoyed the Halloween franchise. It's never been one of those ones where it's like Friday the 13th has always been my baby. That's always the one that just like I
Hmm.
grew up on and that and Nightmare on Elm Street. Um the Halloween movies I've always enjoyed. Of course, the first one is one that like you can't not watch that and appreciate the craft in it. Um, a lot of the sequels have some value for me. Actually, my favorite of the series is part three, just because of how goofy it is. Um,
Yeah.
but this, the in terms of the new trilogy, really enjoyed 2018. It kind of had that vibe of like I've always made that connection of like it's kind of like the Force Awakens. Like Halloween 2018 is to Halloween what the Force Awakens is to Star Wars, where it's like
Yep.
they're taking a lot of the same beats and just modernizing it and introducing some new characters. And then Halloween Kills. I will say the first time I saw Halloween Kills, my first response to that was, what the hell did I just see? That was awful. But then the more I thought about it, the more I thought about like it got so awful that it came around again. And it's just like this like miracle of bad decisions that is at least fascinating. Like for me, Halloween
Hmm.
Kills is like the Fulci film of Halloween, where it's just like none of this makes sense, but it's entertaining.
Like, how did
Um,
that get made? Like,
yeah,
especially from what Halloween 2018 was, where it
mm-hmm.
was a little more like, okay, that's what I expected
Straightforward.
them to
Yeah.
do. And then Halloween Kills was like, everything you thought this trilogy was, we are doing a left turn
Mm-hmm. And then for
because evil
me,
dies tonight.
it sure as hell doesn't. And then for me, Halloween Ends just kind of went out with like it was. I'm always wary of a movie that's supposed to be like this big conclusion that introduces
Hmm.
like this new element or these new characters. I know people are divided about Corey Cunningham as a character. First of all, can we please stop giving characters last names of well-known people in horror? Like it's done. Please stop. Um, and it for me, it was like if I'm going into Halloween Ends, I don't know if this is the case for most people, but like for me, it's like I want to see how this is going to culminate. I want to see how these characters, and in the case of Laurie Strode, it's culminated what like three different times at this point. Because you kind of have part two, the original part two, where that kind of goes off on its own thing. You have
Yep.
H2O, and then of course Resurrection, where you go off on that. You all were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the Michael Myers multiverse in the last episode, or in the Halloween Ends episode. And so, but this one was, in this iteration, this is going to be the culmination. So the fact that we spent, first of all, the fact that Laurie Strode is introduced as almost this entirely different character as she has been the last two, like I get what they're going for. She's
Hmm.
trying to get some semblance of normalcy back in her life. She's trying not to feed the evil that she can tell is what's like kind of feeding Michael Myers and feeding all the bad vibes in the town. But as like
Yeah.
a narrative device, it just sounded like they didn't trust where they were going with Halloween Kills, and then just decided to go like, no, we're going to do a 180 and go in this weird different direction.
Hmm.
Because from what I've heard, that's what they did. Like this was supposed to end. Halloween Kills was supposed to end with Laurie finds out her daughter died. I was actually surprised to learn that she did in fact die. I thought they were gonna like do another thing with like the sheriff,
Deputy,
where yeah,
yeah, with Hawkins, where
yes, with Hawkins.
they so blatantly like stabbed him, ran him over
That
in
man is
Halloween
dead. No,
2018.
okay, yeah.
He's got like one little scar. I just love that.
I thought maybe they were going to do something similarly with Judy Greer's character, but
Right.
they didn't.
Yeah.
But it was originally supposed to be Laurie finds out and she says, "All right, I'm coming to get you." And like the final shot is that one from the trailers that you always saw, where she's walking
Yeah.
through the hallway and like, okay, this is going to happen now. And for whatever reason, they just didn't have faith in that, and so they
Mhm.
did this like 4 years later thing. They've introduced this new character in Corey Cunningham, and it just all of that for me reeks of them not having confidence in their ability to really culminate this story. Um, I'm trying to think of the elements I liked. I did like the finale. I liked the final showdown between Laurie and Michael. I just felt like it
Mhm.
was such an afterthought, you know, and I'm
Mhm.
fine with subdued. Like I like the idea that this was a more intimate fight. But
Mhm.
because the conflict for most of the movie had involved Corey, like his death seemed
Mhm.
anticlimactic, and then the fact that like he dies and then they bring in Michael, it just all of that seemed like an afterthought to me. And so a lot of what I think would have been like the really good kind of emotional catharsis of that scene where she basically like crucifies him to a table and makes him bleed out, like that could have been really good and that could have been really effective. But like none of the stuff that led up to it for me really earned that scene. And I hate using that phrase, like you have to earn it, because that's like such a like film bro thing to say. But it was like I just wasn't. They had taken so many detours, and I just didn't know where they were going with this in a way that by the time they got to the end, I just wasn't as emotionally invested as I would have liked to have been.
Yeah, I can. It's one of those movies. Like it's funny because like Scott and Tamika, I was saying on the previous episode about a lot of stuff that I liked about it, and like I liked how unexpected it was and everything. But then at the same time, I can also empathize with a lot of the points you're making, because after watching it, I was like, I kind of realized, wow, even though I like this, I could totally see why a lot of people are not going to like this movie,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so like blatantly polarizing in so many ways. And it almost feels like they've just been playing with our emotions this whole trilogy. When you look at it, at like it almost sometimes like they're doing things just to subvert the fans' expectations, just because they know, like just because they want to like kind of have that shock factor, like, well, they think we're going to do this, so we're actually going
Yeah.
to do this. And yeah, and but I did like you said, the final fight, even though it wasn't as long as I expected, or like overly epic with like, I don't know if I was expecting like the boxer and Jason Voorhees in Jason Takes Manhattan on the rooftop, like I don't know what I was expecting.
Except this time, Laurie punches Michael's head off. Instead of using the axe like in H2O, she just socks him one. And like she's been trained, like they do this whole thing where like you can see she's been training for that one punch the whole movie. And then she delivers it and his head just goes flying out the window. That would have been awesome.
Like she's been training like Jean-Claude Van Damme, where
Yeah.
she's like Patrick Swayze in Roadhouse, and she's just relentlessly training. And
Yeah.
Deputy Hawkins is like the Sam Elliott character coming in and telling her, you gotta let it go.
And honestly, with as batshit crazy as Halloween Kills was, if they kept that energy going into Halloween Ends, I would have bought it. I would have 100% bought it.
I know,
Uh,
yeah. And well, and like you said, because the end of Kills, which a lot of the criticism there was that Laurie wasn't as involved, but we got this great kind of cliffhanger of her like, okay, the gloves are coming off. Like they kind of set it up where you thought the whole Ends movie was going to be like just primarily those two characters, like,
mm-hmm.
I don't know, just like a nonstop showdown. And then, like I said, you have, enter Corey Cunningham, which as a diehard Friday the 13th fan, I'm sure, I know you said you don't like the name, but, there's a little shout out there. So,
Yeah.
but,
And I will say, for all the things that I do disagree with Scott on about his take on Halloween Ends, I do have one thing I agree with him with. Jeremy absolutely deserved what he got. You can't be that much of a little turd and then not expect something bad to happen to you. Was it overboard? Maybe, but it was an accident. And if you hadn't locked your babysitter into an attic where he thought he was going to get murdered, then he wouldn't have panicked, kicked the door open, and you wouldn't have bounced off of your living room floor or off your foyer, your foyer.
Yeah, not the moment I thought that people would stand up and cheer at, but I feel like we're seeing a movement here of people.
Apparently, there's multiple people who are kind of like, was I supposed to find that funny? Because I kind of found it funny.
Oh yeah, this movie, I could see, that whole scene too. It like subverts your expectations where you think Michael's going to show up, but it's actually this fear of Michael that kind of drives that whole tragic accident. Mm-hmm. And there's some choices made for sure. Like, and it's funny too, because I remember David Gordon Green mentioning something to John Carpenter about, I hope it's not too much like Christine.
Yeah.
And you can see a lot of those influences in there, which
going down that road. Yeah. And you even see it kind of like, the conversation that you all had, I think Tamika brought up during the previous episode or the previous discussion about Halloween Ends, that there's a lot of like comparisons to It and Derry. And for me, it's like, yeah, but if I wanted to see that, I would watch It. Like, why are we rehashing those kinds of themes? I don't really need to see that again. So let's kind of keep this in the realm of Halloween. We don't need to borrow from all these other elements.
Yeah. There's definitely, I think it took a lot of people by surprise. And, I'm curious, just kind of, what I really want to do is watch like all three of these movies together one day and just see if there's any sort of like through line that I'm missing cohesion here as far as.
That was Scott's point. He said that like, if you watch these all in a row, that it might gel better. But I'm just thinking like, I'm going to have whiplash if I see all three of these, to see like the first Halloween, which is pretty straightforward. And then Halloween Kills, which is just batshit crazy. And then like this weird, like quiet study on what makes someone a murderer. Like, I don't know, like that pace. I don't think I can follow that energy, because it's just gonna be like, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's been a journey. I mean, it's been fun to have new Halloween movies. I think like 3 out of the last, just a few new Halloween movies over the last 4 to 5 years. And at least, we got that. And I really don't know where they go from here. I know The Mask is still out there. So, but yeah, and I'll be just curious to see what kind of stories they tell. But it's kind of mind-boggling when we think about it, how we got like a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. We got a new Hellraiser. We got a new Halloween, like Predator all in the same year.
Yeah.
It's now mileage may vary on everyone's enjoyment of those movies, but we got them regardless. So
they sure all exist.
So maybe the next Halloween will be more in your sweet spot.
Yeah, we'll see.
Be more treat than trick for you. But any final thoughts on your experience with Halloween Ends?
Well, like I said, you never know. Like, I didn't really dig Halloween Kills when I first saw it, and it grew on me. So maybe with some time, I'll appreciate this one a little bit more.
Although this one needs its own catchphrase too. Maybe the catchphrase is "Boys who keep secrets don't get custard."
What the hell was that, man? Oh God, yeah, that's the Mrs. Bates knockoff.
Yeah, Corey's mom, who definitely there's like a whole psycho kind of vibe going on in that household.
God, that scene where she just like kisses him, and like that was way too intimate, like and desperate of a kiss. That was weird.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, and there's just a lot of dynamics going on, which I feel like there's like another movie out there that exists in, Danny McBride. You see some of that humor in there, and I feel like they should just have like a McBride cut one of these days, and we'll see maybe what other things are in there with like the stepdad and just the whole family dynamic there.
Yeah.
Oh, so as we leave Haddonfield for now, because I'm sure we shall return one day, maybe sooner than later.
We're gonna be back. Yeah. It's almost at 100 million dollars already. So we're gonna go back to Haddonfield at some point. Might be a couple of years, but it's gonna happen.
Yes, it'll be that's something we can always rely on. And it's like I said, mileage may vary with that, but always fun to revisit one of America's spookiest towns. And this year I got to revisit kind of a new fall Halloween season tradition, which is Soupfest.
Soupfest. I'm so glad I'm here for this. I was so bummed I missed the first conversation. Like, actually, I was bummed I wasn't there to talk about it, but it was so much fun listening to just like the rabbit hole this thing turned into. I've never seen Jonathan more obsessed about anything in my life. It was fantastic. So I'm glad to be able to like be a part of the follow-up.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I felt like I was like being interviewed on like, and people were discovering about some like soup cult or like some like
It was turning into
like,
a Netflix documentary.
yeah, I know. I honestly, I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw an announcement that it like the whole thing got optioned the next day, and they're making a limited series on it. Because, and it's also new to me too. Like I've known like, Zach and his family have done it for years. They used to do it up in the Fargo, North Dakota area. And now recently, Zach and his wife, Sarah, who I'm also really good friends with, they brought it back right here in the Twin Cities. And last year, as we kind of talked about it a few episodes ago, last year I took part in my first ever Soup Fest. It was like the first one I'd ever been to. It was the first time I ever like made a soup to be like judged, other than my own taste buds, like, other than like a can of Chunky,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went with like last year I went with a really elaborate like beer cheese soup with like a gluten-free beer, and it was I made it extra like spicy with like this kind of almost like a jalapeno type flavor.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it was. And the thing about
You're gonna have
that soup,
you need to ship me some of this soup, Derek.
Yes, I think that as long as it keeps, like, if the box might be a little soggy when it gets to you from Minneapolis to Seattle, but
maybe get some kind of thing going with QVC. Like, I'm sure they have the infrastructure to be able to ship this kind of stuff.
Yes,
start selling on QVC.
That's why I need to get the crock pot. See, now I have my excuse. I can finally get the crock pot. So okay, so and then you're covered for the holidays. Then I know exactly what to get you now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this year, I'm like, I spent probably like 7.5 hours making that soup last year, and
oh wow,
I wanted to mix it up this year, and it was kind of really good excuse to make this soup that my grandma always used to make growing up. My grandma Marlis on my mom's side, she would always make this sweet fruit soup, which was more like a dessert than like a meal. It was like
I actually don't think I've heard of a sweet soup before.
Yeah, it's got like this kind of molasses flavor to it. It's like all these dried fruits and like raisins and prunes, and you put like orange juice and some other fruit juices in there, and you kind of like let it cook on the stovetop for a couple hours, and some like apple cider vinegar, a pinch of love, all that all that stuff. But I remember my grandma, she passed away in 2010, and she used to make this soup every year, and I hadn't had it since she passed away. And so I've always wanted to make it since she passed. And this was like, okay, finally I'm going to do this like 12 years later. And it was like one of those recipes that she got from like those old like church cookbooks where like everyone would contribute a recipe like in the 70s and the 60s.
Back in the 70s, where it was just like the weirdest shit imaginable, where it was just like lots of mayonnaise and maybe like Jello involved. Yeah.
And like lard and just really
taking years off your life. Yeah. Little asbestos. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a pinch of that, and that's what I meant by a pinch of love. Hopefully not, but yeah. So it was finally good excuse to make that. So I and it it didn't take quite as long, but I did the mistake of like that period where you leave it on the stovetop and you're supposed to like let it just sit there for like 45 minutes, or you're probably supposed to stir it
Mhm.
occasionally. But I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go like take a shower, get ready to go. And by the time I get back to the stove, like I realize that like three-fourths
The
of my
sugar
raisins
just
have
burned to
melted.
the bottom.
Just yeah, just totally like there's just like this burnt like goop on the
Yeah.
bottom of the pot that I'm cooking this in. But
That's
there's
like
no
some body
time.
horror
Like
type shit. Yeah.
yeah, it looks like venom. Like it just looks like a venom sludge. And so I'm like,
Again, if we're folks, if we, if we're trying to keep this in the horror realm, just like I'm picturing the soup like gaining sentience and starting to like take over the town.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's like the blob, It's, see, we're it's horror related if you just use your imagination a little bit. And so at this point, there's just no time though. So I just kind of dump some extra like orange juice in there and kind of scrape it off the bottom and then pour it into a crock pot. And then me and my sister and brother-in-law, who were also attending and competing, we all, we drive over there like 15 minutes away with our soups. And by the time we get there, there's already like, I would say there's like 20 to 25 people there. There's like, there's upwards, I would say there was definitely like 15 different soups just being set out on these tables in the backyard. They had like one of those 12-foot skeletons out in the front yard to greet everybody. So
I'm so jealous of those things.
Yeah, no, that would be I think that would be a good any time of year, really.
Oh yeah,
to just have that out there
year round. Slap a Santa hat on it and you've got your Christmas decorations.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Nightmare Before Christmas right there. So
exactly.
it all works out. And so we get there, of course. So with Soupfest, there's 3 different rewards. There's best soup, then there's most unique soup, and best presentation, because with your soup you can do like all these, you can kind of theme
garnish
it
and whatnot.
Yeah, like my sister and brother-in-law had this kind of really nice like chicken tortilla soup, and so they had like a Cinco de Mayo and kind of theme going on with that. And then there was just like all sorts of different things. Someone had like a Rick and Morty pickle theme because they did like a pickle suit or pickle soup. So yeah, people get really into it. And so all I had was like this little tiny crock pot and then like my name tag of like Grandma Marlis's sweet fruit soup. And then like that was it. No decoration, like which I mean it kind of goes with the the old school theme of like you just let the taste do the talking.
Just eat the damn soup. Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, it totally makes sense. And
I'm not hiding behind accoutrement. You just enjoy the soup. Yeah.
And funnily enough, someone else had the exact same crock pot I had too. So that was just, you couldn't make that up. It was like,
we should have coordinated
this. Well, yeah, I mean, see, it is quality shopping more than just me shops on that network. I mean, Lar Park Lincoln approved. I mean, so we do the tasting. So then for like really like after you kind of get all your soup out there, and then there's all these cups and you just kind of go around and you ladle like 15 different soups, and you have to use like a different cup. Like thankfully they're kind of biodegradable and everything, but it's like because you don't want to contaminate the flavors and cross contaminate. So you're just literally like,
especially with a sweet soup, like you don't want to do like a beef vegetable and then all of a sudden you have like orange juice and fruit. Like I don't think you want that in the same cup.
No, I think that would be, I mean, I'm adventurous with tasting, but that would be like that's like toothpaste and orange juice. You just don't mix them. But that's my soup for next year. But
like, honestly, like, again, this sounds like the premise to like someone mixes the wrong concoction of soups and it winds up being like the zombie plague.
Right. Yeah, I could totally see this being ground zero for some apocalyptic event.
Yeah.
If something just went horribly wrong, or like, there's just something in there, like the magic recipe that just turns everyone into the infected.
Just so happens with these proportions, you will turn into the undead. Yeah.
That could be what started everything on The Walking Dead. We really don't know what started it.
They never really explained it. So it was Soupfest. That's my headcanon now. Soupfest started the Walking Dead plague.
I'm sure it's canon. I think they would approve that. And so we're doing the tasting, and then kind of like Survivor, like everyone gets a sheet and you write down kind of secretly what your pick is for each one, and it goes into this mailbox, and then this like detachable mailbox is then taken into the house where a couple of people, like neutral parties, will count the votes,
tally it up. Okay.
and then meanwhile
Do
we're
you have
out
to
in the
pay
yard.
like? Do you have to pay like third party people to come in and count the votes for you? Or
Yeah, it's like a Guinness Book of World Records where you have to like hire someone out to come and witness
call Ripley's.
everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, so well, we trust them enough where I'm hoping that there's some integrity there and everything. So we then it's time to reveal the winners, and I'm feeling pretty good because at this point, because like everyone kind of was eyeing up my soup and didn't really know what the hell it was at first, but then as people tasted it, I could see them reacting like, oh man, this is like really good. And even like people that were kind of hesitant to eat it, they were kind of like, oh wow, this is actually good, like because it kind of looks it's like a dark sludge, it's like kind of, you're kind of wondering what is this, but I guess the best way to describe it is it's kind of like a pie filling.
Was it supposed to be the sludge, or was that how it came out?
Well, it is naturally sludgy, but
you remember eating it back in the? Okay, so it might have been a little bit more sludgy than the recipe called for, but it was in the realm of what it was supposed to be.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, burning half of the ingredients didn't really help with the appearance of it.
This is a soup reduction. This is my play on my grandmother's recipe. I've reduced it down so it's a little bit more sludgy. I think you'll enjoy it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's my own twist, and maybe maybe she foresaw that I would burn it and then just made the ingredients that way because she knew that I was going to go run off and forget what I was doing and realize, oh man, yeah, A, don't burn the house down, and B, don't burn your soup.
Apparently you need to stir this shit. Wild.
So then it comes time to reveal the votes, and we're all gathered around like it's midsummer, like this big event, we're like dancing around the maypole, and then
who's getting sacrificed in the bear. Yeah.
But that's all happening, in the background. The main event is really the Soupfest. So
there's a virgin in the background being burned in a giant wicker man. Yeah.
It's all part of the Halloween decorations.
I know how Soupfest goes down. I know how they roll in Minnesota.
So we gather around, the votes are revealed, and so best presentation, unsurprisingly didn't go to me. It went to this really cool couple who did like a psychic fortune teller, and it was like this massive display, and you actually got like a fortune out of it, like you could pull fortunes out of it. And I think mine was something about self-improvement and that kind of thing. But
it would have been better if it was all like trash talking. It was like your soup won't win, everybody's gonna hate your soup, just go home now, you have no chance. Like they should have trash talk via their fortunes. That would have been awesome.
You're going to die in 7 days.
What?
Normal trash talk stuff.
This soup
just
will kill you.
Fun.
What?
And the best soup went to this amazing, it was a Gouda pepper soup that was really good. It was like kind of this like almost tasted like eating like a sweet potato, but with a spiciness to it. And it was just the texture was so creamy. Oh my gosh, it was amazing.
Would you say the soup was very Gouda?
And that's gonna do it for us, folks.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks to Bryan for making this sound good and editing this part of the show out as quickly as possible.
You can follow us at Corpse Tub. But before we get to that part,
stay scary. Bye. Yeah.
Just do a 180 here. But lo and behold, the most unique soup, which I kind of was banking towards, they announced Grandma Marlis's sweet fruit soup.
Love it. So you'll love to see it.
It was amazing. Like I felt like I was in a Mighty Ducks movie or something, and we just won the championship. And
Or it was like that moment where you like, oh, you think they're out, you're like they're down and out, and then you realize, oh, there's one category left, most unique.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not out of it yet. And I found out I also got I think it was like 4 votes for best soup in addition to that. So
Oh,
not
look at
to
you.
toot my own horn here, but I felt pretty good about that. And the cool thing too is that each of the winners gets this homemade trophy, which is a soup ladle that's drilled into like a board, like a
A
board,
stand. Yeah.
and yeah, stand, and it's spray painted gold. The whole
That's
thing is
awesome.
spray painted
You
gold.
got a
So
golden
Zach,
ladle.
yeah, the golden ladle. So Zach makes those every year, and yeah,
Love
it just felt like it just felt like a Cinderella story ending. It was,
it.
I couldn't believe I was just trying to, see if I could even make it because it was so different and I'd never made it before. So I felt just really cool, and it was a cool way to honor my grandma and just have some fun and eat a bunch of good soup. And the only bad thing was that after that, all of that, I went back to like have some more for myself, and it was all gone. So either
Well,
the
now,
squirrels
now
got
you got to
to it
make
or
some
people
more.
really
Yeah.
liked it.
Well, that's a good sign. If there's no more left, that means it was successful.
Yes. So that was my Soup Fest experience. I was not sacrificed in any Soup Fest ceremony. And shout out to Zach and Sarah, who are Corpse Club listeners as well, for hosting and letting me share this with the world, because I think the more people that know about Soup Fest, the better. It's truly a really cool Halloween season event. So
I think we're
that
going to turn
was
this into a thing. Like, I think Soupfest is going to go national.
right. I mean, it's like some of those events, they got to start somewhere, and then they
Exactly.
become a thing.
They
Like
become
all
an
those like
institution.
the
Yeah.
mud obstacle courses and
The
stuff like
Tough
that. Like,
Mudders.
we're just gonna take this on the road. We
I
can
think
get
it's got
Martha
legs.
Stewart in as
It's
like a
definitely
guest
got legs.
judge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe it'll be on QVC one day. Well, who knows?
Look
But
out, Great British Bake Off. They're coming. Soupfest is coming for you.
I could see it on Netflix for sure. I could totally see it. Just add some like skydiving stunts or like some bizarre challenges, and you could have a show right there.
Absolutely.
And so I got to enjoy some soup, but obviously there's a lot of stuff going on over in the Seattle area as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you didn't have your own soup fest, I know you did some pretty cool stuff, including a screening that I'm super jealous about,
Yeah, I guess you
that
in
I really
particular
want to
are.
hear more about.
So yeah, when I moved to the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area, one of the things I was particularly excited about was that none other than Emily Von Zala lives in this area. Daily Dead contributor, co-host for the Dead Ringers podcast, and it's kind of one of those things where it took a bit for us to connect, mainly because like we showed up in the middle of the pandemic. So it was kind of like, yeah, we're not seeing anybody for a while. But eventually, we got to start hanging out. We've really enjoyed kind of getting to spend time with her and her partner. And so we got a really good invitation to see a screening. They rented out in Seattle. There's a movie theater devoted to the Seattle International Film Festival. And so you can actually rent it out and just have the run of it. It's like a 90 to 100 person seat theater.
Wow.
And there were like, I don't know, a dozen of us. And we all got to see on the big screen, which was a first time for me, none other than Joel Schumacher's vampire classic, The Lost Boys. It was so
Oh,
cool. It was so good. Like, obviously, like I love this movie. I'm like in the camp of Team Lost Boys versus Team Fright Night. I am Team Lost Boys all the way. I love, I appreciate Fright Night. I love it, but it's if I had to
mhm.
choose one, like The Lost Boys is my baby.
Oh yeah.
Um and so getting a chance to just see this not only on a big screen, but with a small crowd of people who are all there to see it was really a really amazing experience.
Oh,
And so like, and apparently the SIF theater folks are really cool in terms of like you know how when you sit down, like they'll usually have like music or something playing in the background, or um, they actually let you provide like any playlist you want.
Oh,
So we're
wow.
sitting there listening to like a lot of the songs from the soundtrack. Of course, we got a little, I Believe from Tim Capello.
Yes.
We
Sweaty
got some of
sax
the
man himself.
exactly. Yeah, we got some of the deeper cuts from there. If anybody like if you like Elton John um songs and you like to hear covers of them, Roger Daltrey actually does a really
Mm.
good cover of the song Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, which, obviously the title is a good connection
Oh,
to the
yeah.
movie. But yeah, it's really good. It's kind of one of those songs where you never hear it unless you like watch the movie through the complete end credits, because that's the only time it comes up. Um,
Oh, so it's kind
uh,
of they sneak it in at the very end
yeah,
of
exactly.
okay.
Mhm.
Nice.
So yeah, we got to hear like, we got to get pumped up, kind of, sitting there for like 20 minutes before the movie, listening to the music and just kind of getting ready for it. You don't have to watch all the like the dumb like Regal Cinema or AMC ads that go on for like 25 minutes before the movie. Like there weren't any trailers. It just went right into the movie.
Although
Um,
I would hope that you would still kept the Nicole Kidman AMC commercial in there.
she
Just
was there actually. She was
oh
there
wow.
in person.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a nice
Perfect.
surprise beforehand. Yeah, creeped
Wow.
everybody out. She just did the thing and then left. Like she didn't talk to anybody. She said nothing afterwards. She just did it
Wow.
and left. And then the movie started. So we were all a little bit discombobulated when things got started.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was such a treat. And like for me, that's one of those movies that I could watch that once a month and it would never get old. But
Yep.
it had been a little bit since I saw it. And it was
Yeah.
just like, it was just amazing. I had such a great time.
Mm. And was that your first time seeing it on a big screen too?
Yes. Yeah. I had never seen it like
That's
in a movie theater before. So that was a really cool way to experience that.
that's really cool. Yeah. Like you, I mean that it's my favorite movie of all time. I would say right up there, like just with anything that I can think of, and has been for a really long time. And I love how it captures like it's so fun, but it's like so stylish and like just
Mm-hmm.
such a time capsule of a movie. Like just the definition of like 80s horror to me. Like I just love everything about it.
And it's one of those movies that is like, it's a funny paradox because it is instantly dated because of how 80s it is, but it's
Yeah,
also really timeless. Like you don't
right.
watch anything and be like, well, this doesn't hold up. Like it's very of its time, but it's not something where it's like that doesn't distract you, or at least it doesn't distract me.
Yeah.
Um, and I will
And
also
it
say that like all of like the aesthetics, the wardrobe, the set design, all of the effects, seeing this on a big screen, 30 what 5 years after it came out, all of that is still almost seamless. Like none of the
wow.
makeup, like and I'm seeing this. I think it was like a 4K Blu-ray that they provided. So seeing that on a
Oh,
big screen, like you always run that risk of like, oh, I can actually like see that this is makeup, and that did not come through here. Like they're all, as far as I'm concerned, Kiefer Sutherland is actually a vampire.
that yeah. The makeup is phenomenal in that movie. Vanille, who did worked on that movie. I mean that work really stands up, and I'm glad to hear too because I know they just released the 4K Ultra HD version of it, which
Mm.
I haven't seen it yet, so I'm glad to hear that like what you saw, especially on a big screen, like it actually
Mm-hmm.
holds up because
If the
I'm
seams were
always
going to
nervous
show,
about that.
yeah.
Oh, that's so
Yeah,
cool.
as far as I can tell,
Dang.
still completely holds up, at least from what I saw.
Like that's an event where I would consider like doing a road trip just to like be there for that because it is so cool and it's such like an intimate thing too where you get to experience it like in a setting like that with people that you like you're
Mm.
friends with them and you know that they love this movie like as much as you do. Did anyone cosplay like as
No,
anybody from
yeah,
the
no,
movie?
everyone was just kind of hanging out. It was casual, which I appreciate. Everybody just was there to see the movie. Nobody felt the need to dress up.
It wasn't like a sing along in the aisles like
No, yeah, we weren't doing Rocky Horror or anything like that. I did get a little tempted during, Tim Capello's big scene to go up and like pantomime, but I restrained myself. I think to the good fortune of everybody in the crowd.
Right. No cry little sister
No, yeah.
coordinated dance movements or anything like that. But
Nah, next time.
next, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh,
We'll
that is
get you
so
out for
cool.
the road trip for that one. We'll do all of
Perfect.
this again. I'll host it this time and make sure that yeah, you can get out here for it.
That would be amazing. Yeah, and like kind of like you, it's been a while since I've watched it. Like it's funny because there's those movies where I love them so much, but like I don't watch them as much as I should because I'm almost like I
It's not
think
even
about
that.
them a lot, but I just don't
Yeah,
sit down and watch them as much as I should.
some movies are just so ingrained in your head that you don't need to watch them again because like
Hmm.
you can just play it in your head because you've seen it so many times. This is one of those for me where it's just like if if I had to sit down and just do like a complete plot synopsis, I could probably do that to some pretty good level of detail. So yeah, some of those movies that you kind of like cherish that deeply are ones that you don't need to watch as often anymore just because like they're just part of your consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's almost like a movie in your mind and it's just
Mhm.
endlessly playing. So, well, that's really cool. I didn't get to watch The Lost Boys this Halloween season, and it actually was playing at an AMC theater at one point where I probably I
Then
could
you
have
could
made
have
that
gotten to see
happen.
Nicole Kidman and everything.
Right? Yeah. Maybe yeah. It could have been. She could have been like a star. Like maybe maybe it's like the Lost Boys version of that.
Yeah,
You never
exactly.
know. But I did get to catch up on a movie I'd been wanting to watch for a while, and that was my best friend's Exorcism,
Nice.
based on the Grady Hendrix book of the same name.
Which I
Which
have read the book. I have not seen the movie yet.
Oh, okay, and I feel bad because Zach Soupfest host Zach, who I've known, we're best friends going way back, and did Tuesday Movie Men and everything together. He got me this book for I believe it was Christmas quite recently, and I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. So
So I
I
just
got
watched
to
the
see the
and then said I read the book.
right, yeah, it's like doing a book report back in the day
Yeah,
where you're like, it's
exactly.
close enough, right? But I do want to read it, and it's nice. Like Grady Hendrix was an executive producer on it, so he was very involved, I think, with some of the creative decisions and everything. So, but for those unfamiliar with the movie or the book, it takes place in 1988. It follows these two high school sophomores, Abby Rivers and Gretchen Lang, who are best friends. But there's like a lot of people growing up and in a lot of movies, Gretchen's about to move away, so they're kind of at this crossroads in their friendship, and they're wondering, what the future holds and what if they'll still be friends down the line. And they go to this kind of like lakeside house for the weekend, and they take some acid and things get out of hand, and they end up going next door to this really creepy tiny house, which when they get on the inside of it, it actually seems to be much larger, which is
Mm.
really creepy in and of itself. Like it almost feels like this weird creepy pasta story. And while they're in there, they get separated, and Gretchen ends up getting like possessed by this entity, this demonic force. And throughout the course of the movie, like you see how this affects like her personality starts to change. Like she's haunted by this demonic entity at night, so she's not getting any sleep, and it's a very like violating kind of like omnipresent force in her life. And it kind of it almost turns like the movie almost turns into Mean Girls in a way where she like starts manipulating like
Mm.
this friendship group, and each person has like a thing in their life that she is able to kind of like toy with and kind of ruin their lives.
Mm.
And it gets, of course, it starts to get out of hand though, because like this, she's possessed by this demonic force, so she takes things way too far. And so that's kind of the course of the movie. And then her best friend Abby is trying to figure out how to handle this, and eventually gets this bodybuilding
So they
like
kept that in there. Okay.
yeah yeah, there's this trio of bodybuilding like brothers who are like
They're like
I don't know if they're necessarily pastors.
like Christian motivational speakers or
Yeah,
something like
that's a
that.
good way to put it. Yeah, like very much like quoting the Bible while lifting like huge weights and stuff like literally at
Like I
one
don't know.
point.
I don't know if y'all remember this. There was a period of time, like it was weird because it wasn't the late 80s. This was back like when I was in high school. So definitely not that long ago. This is like early 2000s. But I remember there were these like, this is a play on those motivational speakers from that era where like it would be these bodybuilders and they would be doing like these crazy acts of strength, like breaking handcuffs or tearing apart phone books or like crushing apples. And it was like they didn't really have the Christian element, but it was more just like they were trying to inspire you and motivate you to do better things with your life by tearing phone books in half. It was the weirdest thing. It was like, I'm not really sure how to connect A to B on this one. So yeah, that was definitely the thing I thought of when having read the book. They're very prominent characters, these Christian bodybuilder motivational speakers. So it was interesting to see him toy with that. So interested to see how that came across in the movie.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to hear what you think of their portrayal in the movie, because it's like you say, it's like it's okay, you're doing some like, really intense, feats of strength, but like what is this, how is this going to help me with like
Yeah.
this other thing going on in my life? For me growing up, it wasn't the bodybuilders, it was like skateboarders and like, hey, I can do the, is this more of like,
They got
how
rad.
can we impress
Yeah.
these kids? How can we relate to them? And skateboarding was really big at the time. So it's like, check it out. I can do this cool trick and also stay out of drugs,
I can do this kickflip because I don't do marijuana.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, well, wouldn't that actually like potentially help you in some instances?
I'm pretty sure most really good skateboarders do a lot of pot. So do with that what you will.
And at one point they're even like dead, like kind of like deadlifting like a giant cross. Like they just really leaned into it in the movie. And he's transporting this giant cross like down a mall escalator at one point. It's just like, they really lean into the humor of these characters. And it doesn't go as like dark as I expected it to in some ways. Like they have a lot of fun with it, but at the same time they're dealing with some really like dark issues. There's everyone just kind of writes it off, like everyone that Abby goes to help for, and she's trying to tell them like, hey, my friend, because she, before she realizes it's a demon, she's thinking, well, maybe she was sexually abused and that kind of stuff. And like,
yeah, that's definitely something that carries over from the book too. That was kind of the undercurrent in the book, that everybody just assumed she was like sexually assaulted or something like that. Yeah.
And that's like almost more horrific, just to see like these, people that are supposed to help her just kind of brushing it under the rug and like, oh, you're just trying to drag her name through the mud and this and that. But I love the chemistry, like the movie, it's not a perfect movie, and I think sometimes it's almost like more mean spirited than it needs to be in a weird way. But I feel like overall it definitely works more than it doesn't, and they just have a lot of fun with it. There's like, it's very 80s, but not like hitting you over the head with 80s stuff. There's like the Tiffany posters, and they have the obsession with Boy George, but it's like used like sparingly enough where it's like, oh yeah, this is just the world they live in. They're not like trying to be like, do you remember this time? Just shaking you. And
I think from what I remember from the book, some of the same things you're saying are similar to me, kind of like for good and for bad. There were like, some of it was a little hit or miss. I do remember the thing that really connected with me was they do a really good job at conveying like the central friendship and kind of what becomes of that as things conclude. I think he does a really good job at sticking the landing on that. So I hope they do something similar with the movie without giving it away.
Yeah, I think they definitely do. And Elsie Fisher, who plays Abby, and Amaya Miller, who plays Gretchen, like they have such a natural chemistry where it just feels like, oh yeah, these would be best friends in real life. But then they also convey like this, kind of this horrible like breaking up of that friendship once she is possessed. And so there's definitely, I think that's what makes the movie work more than anything, is just they casted it really well. and Christopher Landon is one of the producers, so I think he just brings like an authenticity to everything that he does, and he's
Yeah.
so good at horror comedy too. Like just having him involved as a producer, I think probably helped a lot. So that was a lot of fun. It's a Prime Video release, so it's on Prime Video right now. It's a little over an hour and a half, so it's definitely worth checking out, I think, especially like I haven't read the book yet, but it felt, even without that, it felt like something worth checking out. And now I want to go read the book too, because I want to like see what Grady Hendrix did in the book that they might have not done in the movie. So it was a good experience.
Cool.
And let's see, as we kind of ruminate on some of our final Halloween season highlights, I have to mention that on Twitter I saw an amazing costume that you had as a barbarian that I need to know like the backstory and like the costume party and just everything about it, because that you went all out with that costume.
So like so some friends of mine had a costume party over the weekend for Halloween, of course. They had a costume party over the weekend. And I don't know, I always find that like it's hard for me, as like I'm a bigger dude. And it's harder for me to find costumes that are like a good fit for my body type. So like last year I went as Nandor the Relentless from What We Do in the Shadows. I think it worked pretty well. But it's like, I don't know. It's always hard to like find something that's like what matches with like a big gray haired bald dude. And so I was like, well, you're into nerdy shit. Like, why haven't you tried going the barbarian route? And to be clear, because I know this is a horror podcast, not the movie Barbarian, that is getting a lot of buzz right now. I was just a straight up like fantasy tropey barbarian. And so yeah, it was fun. I got to do like this like fur cape and a kilt and like this big fake axe. It was a little bit more revealing than I had expected it to be. So if you want to say it was maybe a little bit of like a slutty barbarian, that probably wouldn't be too far from the truth. But it was fun. Yeah. It was cool to kind of do something where it was like, this was one of those first costumes where I was like, okay, yeah, I can see this. This is me a little bit. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. People seemed to enjoy it at the party. And yeah, it was weird because it was like the house I was at was like, for as like the cowl thing I had in my shoulders like wasn't super extensive, but it was enough to like make it really hot. So like I was warming up at the party, so we actually wound up spending a lot of it out in the back porch where I could like take a couple of breaths, which was fun. So yeah, it was a really great time.
And it feels like it's been a really warm like Halloween season weather-wise, so it's actually
not here.
Oh, okay. Well, you're just in a constant whirlwind of like cooler air and that kind of thing.
Well, it's been like a weird, like a couple of weeks ago, it had stayed warm, like for Seattle, which was like 70s. And then like in the matter of a week, all the rain started and it went down into like the 40s and it's just stayed there, which is kind of what happens, but it was so abrupt this year. So yeah, it was a little cooler over the weekend, but given the context, it actually wound up being nice.
And did you already have the axe, or was that something that you got?
That was courtesy of Spirit Halloween.
Oh, nice.
I am hanging on to it though, like, just because it's
forge it yourself in the backyard or anything.
No, there was no like Nicolas Cage and Mandy sequence where like I was smelting the metal and hammering it out. No, this was just, it's a big plastic axe.
I love that. I would have loved it. It would have been great if you had worn that to the Lost Boys screening, but no explanation. Just like,
what are you talking about? This is just how I dress.
There's barbarians in this movie, right? We're watching, but yeah, I love that though, because it seemed like something right up like a character you would see in Skyrim or like Diablo, where it's like someone you would come across in your travels, or even as a playable character too. So that was,
especially like in the beginning of in the first couple, Barbarian was one you could play in Diablo. So yeah, that definitely lines up with that.
Using that strength.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I did not dress up this year. I kind of was lazy in that regard. I was recovering from Soupfest. I was
Coming
I
down off
just
that high of that of the most unique award. So yeah, no, I get it.
sprawled out on the floor with my awards just scattered around me. But I did we had the annual tradition of, so I was at my parents' house, and my mom and I were kind of on trick-or-treater duty. And every year my cousins, Gunnar and Kate, who are Corpse Club listeners as well, so shout out to them. uh they they always come and trick or treat at our house. And so it's always interesting to see what costumes they have. And this year they got really creative because it's kind of like a DIY Halloween. And so Kate, who is 11 years old, she got like this M&M cookie costume that she made, where like just cut out like a really cool like cardboard uh thing that you wear, like kind of like a sandwich board. Sure. And like drew all the M&Ms and everything. And
oh, that's awesome.
And the really cool thing about it was that my Aunt Lynn, she was there as well, and she had the same kind of costume, but she was 2% milk. So it was a nice nice it was a nice companion piece there. And then Gunnar, who is super excited, he's a 13-year-old gamer, and he always beats me, so he's better than I am. But he and with the new Call of Duty coming out recently, he's super into that. And he was all decked out in like army gear. He had like the camo hat and just he's ready to go to war in Call of Duty. So sure. So that was really cool to see them. And so shout out to them. And what was also really cool is, like, with COVID, of course, it's been, not a lot of trick-or-treaters in the last couple of years, but even before that, like, just, how neighborhoods kind of go through different phases where there's like not as many trick-or-treater age people around. And so I think we had seen like a dozen, like even before COVID, but this year we had like 67 trick-or-treaters, which was, yeah, it got so many that I actually had to like go into like the office and
your personal stash.
Seriously, I was giving out microwavable popcorn by the end of the night, where I'm like, I don't know what to give them.
I got nothing else. I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to get egged, man.
What was kind of creepy too is that my mom and I were just kind of sitting there talking, and then all of a sudden we're like, I feel like we just felt like someone was outside the door, but like no one had knocked on the door yet. And so I go down there, and I'm like, there's like 5 teenagers just like standing there. And it was like, just like not moving, just like standing there. And I'm super like, what is going on? Yeah. And it's like purge night or something. And I open the door and they're like, and then this other teenager was on the side of the door, and he like steps right into like right in front of me
into frame. Yeah.
And he's like, we had the Monday Night Football game on, and he was like, who's winning? And I'm like, oh, okay. So you guys have just been standing out here watching through our windows.
You do not have your own TV that you can go and watch that on? This is creepy. Please get off my property.
And that's when I'm like, okay, here's the popcorn, and I'm like, here's my wallet, just
please don't hurt me. Yeah.
I'm like, you guys are
and I'm not one of those people, like, if teenagers go trick-or-treating, just give them some candy. Like, don't be jerks. Like, teenagers are allowed to trick or treat too. It's a little weird that they were just standing on your porch watching football through your window. That's a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, I went trick or treat, and I think I was in my last year was like 8th grade, but like all my, like it was just my dad actually took me out because I was like the only one still trick or treating and in my group, and like just. But I wanted to, like, it's such a, like, it's a weird thing. Like, no one really, there's no like right age to stop. Right.
Yeah.
There's like,
no one tells you that it's like, you're too old. It's only when you get out there and you start getting the weird cockeyed glances that,
or you knock on someone's door and they give you the classifieds ad and they're like, get a job.
Yeah. So for me, it wasn't so much the trick or treating that like I did like past when seems to be socially acceptable. It was the haunted hay rides and stuff like that, because it was like I didn't stop enjoying those things when I became an
Right.
adult, but there came a point
Yeah.
where I'm there and I'm just like I'm surrounded by a bunch of tweens and I'm just like, ooh, this feels uncomfortable now.
And it's funny because I even like as recently as 2019, we took my parents to Haunted Hayride, and but I guess that felt a little like you're with kind of like a bigger group, so you're
Yeah.
like, okay, we're all older, but I
Yeah.
know what you mean because then you like you do it like we would do it through high school and college, and then all of a sudden it's like. Oh yeah, you just kind of are like, oh man, I feel like all of a sudden you feel like the old one, and it's
Mm-hmm.
there's
Yeah.
nobody like you don't get a letter in the mail saying like, oh, you're now the old one in the group. But
Like you start to feel like the college kid who shows up at the high school parties, and it's just like, there's something kind of creepy about it. That said, I 100% went to one this year.
yes,
Me and like
that
five
is a
friends got together and did the Georgetown Morgue, which is in like the southern
oh,
end of Seattle. And
that's
this was
cool.
actually like this used to be an old functioning morgue
Oh,
that
whoa.
they took over and turned it into a haunted attraction. It was really cool. It was like it was pretty straightforward. um I really like at this point now, I'm at the age where like it doesn't scare me. I just
Hmm.
appreciate like the work that they put into like putting different themes into the room. So like one of them was like this old redneck cabin where there's just like, deer meat and deer heads, and then other body parts are like hanging from the ceiling. They had like
Oh
this
yeah.
they had this pretty elaborate like toxic waste site where there was like a bright green like waterfall coming down at one point.
Dang.
So yeah, most of it was like it was just cool to kind of see the aesthetics and kind of go back to that feeling of being a kid a little bit. The one part that did legitimately freak me out though, like so there's this room where kind of the old faithful is they've got clowns with chainsaws, which I'm used to seeing, not a
Hmm.
big deal. But they push you into this room where they had this kind of these two big inflatable walls that came together, and you're walking
Oh.
through them and you can't move, and it's like you can move.
Hmm.
It's very confining and it's very claustrophobic, and you don't know where you're going. You don't know where the people ahead of you have gone. You don't know if the people who are coming up behind you are going to run into you, which they totally did. So yeah, it was a really like discombobulating experience.
I know exactly what you're talking. Like it's when you, yeah, it's like there's like a crack in the wall almost, and you're just like
Yeah,
moving through, kind of
exactly.
like in Nope when they're inside the
Yes,
alien,
yeah, where they're
and
being
it's
eaten. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So of course, yeah. I mean, nothing. What bad thing could happen in there? But
yeah.
it's and being a little claustrophobic myself too. That really, I remember doing that once, and it is really legitimately freaky
Yeah.
because you don't know, and then you're like, am I supposed to be in here? Is this like
Did I
just a
go the wrong
weird like
way? Yeah,
fissure in the wall?
yeah.
Like
Then you come out the other side and like the clowns with chainsaws are over there. It's like, oh, thank God.
yeah. Oh, thank God, more clowns with chainsaws. It's I've been looking all over for you guys.
Yeah,
But
where'd you go? Don't scare me like that.
I think that's what's cool though too is that there's so many like customizable or like different types of haunted attractions where it does feel like more all ages now than it did like back when we were
Yeah,
growing up, where it feels like it like there's like Duluth has a really cool like haunted ship, and like so it feels like there's something for everybody. So
sure.
at least that's what I'm going to say, because I do want to keep going to these these
I will
places.
say there was a pretty good range of age people there. So yeah, I didn't feel out of place.
Nice. You weren't like Steve Buscemi in
Hello, fellow
the
kids.
GIF.
Yeah, none of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
With the skateboard over your shoulder.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Well, before we sign off, any other fond Halloween moments you want to ruminate as we shake off these hangovers?
No, I think that's about it. Just a general shout out to all the folks on Twitter who like one of my favorite things for Halloween on Twitter is just seeing all the different costumes that people have. And once again, folks didn't disappoint this year. So it was just kind of cool seeing everybody get into the spirit of things. Hope everybody had another great Halloween. I know we're back to the countdown. We're what today is it like 362 days until Halloween or something like that. But as horror fans, like, Halloween doesn't go away for us. It just it hibernates while we keep watching horror movies all year. So yeah, we'll be back here again before you know it.
Yes, and now we enter the beloved holiday horror season as well, so we can dust off the Christmas evils and the Silent Night, Deadly Nights, and
Can't wait.
and unwrap all of those delightful horrors. So, but and before we wrap things up, I do want to give a shout out to Heather Wixson, whose new book Monsters, Makeup, and Effects Volume 2 is now available. Came out just in time for Halloween. So that's another big highlight of the season. And be sure to go to dailydead.com for details on how you can order your own copy. Follow Heather Wixson at The Horror Chick on Twitter and at MMEFX book on Twitter as well. And you can find all the links to order your own copy, because I could say, having read it, there's a lot of just amazing stories in there, and hundreds of like behind the scenes photos that you have to see to believe from these makeup artists behind some really big movies in horror history. So definitely do yourself a favor and check that out. And with the holiday shopping season coming around the corner here, it's definitely the perfect gift for the horror lover in your life. And we also want to thank Bryan, our engineer, for helping us out every episode. And as always, we want to thank our listeners, including those of you who have signed up for a Corpse Club membership. Make sure to visit corpseclub.com to check out our latest episode. You can also sign up to become a member, which will give you access to all sorts of ghoulish goodies. We've got t-shirts, we've got pins, we've got the abilities to suggest an episode. So if you want us to keep talking about Halloween or Halloween Ends, we can do that. We can make that happen.
It'd be so weird if someone like kept doing, like, we just keep getting people saying like, no, talk about Halloween Ends again. So like every new person, it's like, okay, well, I guess we have to. It's like,
and we have no choice.
This is our 17th episode talking about Halloween Ends.
I know there's a podcast that does that too, where they would watch the same movie over and over.
Oh,
and
you're
almost
that.
Yeah, it's like it forces you. And Halloween Ends might have a lot of layers for us to dissect. So maybe that is something we end up doing, or maybe it's Kills or 2018 or even Resurrection. You never know. Join Corpse Club and force us to watch it over and over again. Also, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Every rating and review really does help. You can also find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and all of your favorite podcast providers. If you want to get in touch, you can reach us anytime at contact@corpseclub.com or on Twitter @DailyDeadNews or @CorpseClub, and on Instagram and Facebook under Corpse Club. Thanks again for listening. Happy Halloween. And until next time, stay scary.